So, we're about to dive into something truly incredible, a 4,000-year-long story about one single piece of land, the land tucked right between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. This is a journey that's going to take us from one of the most famous cities in all of human history to a massive, modern capital. Let's get right into it. Everything kicks off with this one number, 50 miles. That is the tiny distance that separates the ancient, crumbling ruins of Babylon from Baghdad, the capital of modern Iraq. And you can see it right here. Both of these incredible cities are perched on the exact same stretch of river. Now, that is not some random geographic coincidence. It's the thread that ties our entire story together. That river is the whole reason this land has been so unbelievably important for so long. Yeah, this geographic link, it's totally unbreakable. It's a story where the main character isn't a person, but the land itself, a stage that has watched empires rise and fall, all of them drawn to the lifeblood of its rivers. This quote just nails it, doesn't it? For 4,000 years, the same human drama has played out right here, on this very stage. And that's exactly why, if you really want to understand modern Iraq, you have to start the journey in ancient Babylon. All right, let's rewind the clock. Way back. We're starting in the ancient world, with a name that just echoes through history, Babylon. You know, a city made infamous by stories like the Tower of Babel. And what's really wild is that in Hebrew, the word Babel and the word Babylon are the exact same word. So that story from Genesis created this incredibly powerful narrative that lasted for centuries, basically painting Babylon as the ultimate symbol of rebellion and sin. And at the absolute center of this story is King Nebuchadnezzar II. And man, he's a figure of two totally different stories, as you can see. On the one hand, to the biblical authors, whose temple he burned to the ground, he was a monster, a destroyer. But on the other hand, in his own kingdom's records, he's shown as this deeply religious ruler, a restorer of temples. And the craziest part? From their own points of view, both are absolutely true. So after Nebuchadnezzar, the story of this land just becomes a parade of empires, one after another. The first huge power shift comes in 539 BC with the Persian king Cyrus the Great. His takeover of Babylon is the stuff of legend. He actually diverted the Euphrates River so his army could just march into the city on the dry riverbed. I mean, what a genius military move. And just like that, a new era of Persian rule began. A couple hundred years later, a whole new force blows in from the west. Alexander the Great. He crushes the Persians and decides Babylon is going to be the grand capital of his massive empire. It was a dream he never got to see, though, because he died in that very city just a few years later. It's just this perfect reminder of how this land has always been the ultimate prize for the world's greatest conquerors. After Alexander's death, things shift again, and the land falls under the control of another Eastern power, the Parthians. This Iranian dynasty ruled Mesopotamia for centuries, and they controlled one of the most important economic engines of the ancient world, the Silk Road. That made this spot a super important and super rich connection between the Roman Empire and China. Okay, so our journey through the ancient world ends with the rise of the Sassanids, the last great Persian empire of antiquity. They set up their capital, Ctesiphon, right next door to the old ruins of Babylon. And that's no accident. It's just another example of how power keeps returning to this same exact spot. Their long, successful rule would set the stage for the next and maybe the most dramatic transformation in this land's history. Okay, so we've been moving fast, but now we gotta slow it down a bit, because we have arrived at a moment that changes everything. This is the chapter of Baghdad's unbelievable rise to glory, and its equally catastrophic fall. The year is 636 AD. This one single event, the Battle of Al-Qadisiyah, is probably the most important transition in the entire 4,000-year history of this place. Arab-Muslim armies defeated the mighty Sassanid Persians, and this was the moment that ancient Mesopotamia began to become the Arab and Muslim Iraq that we know today. This victory sets the stage for the founding of Baghdad in 762 AD, and for the next 500 years, this city was, no exaggeration, the center of the world. It was home to the legendary House of Wisdom, this amazing center for science and philosophy where scholars were translating Aristotle and Plato, basically saving them for humanity. It was a global trade hub. It was the heart of the powerful Abbasid Caliphate. It was a golden age of culture and intellect unlike any other. And then came this year, 1258, a year that marks an absolutely horrifying turning point. The Mongols, led by Genghis Khan's own grandson, Hulagu, arrived and just leveled the city. They destroyed the House of Wisdom, they shattered the ancient irrigation canals, and they brought the Islamic Golden Age to a sudden, brutal, violent end. So after that catastrophe, we start moving into the modern era. And this is a period where this land goes from being just another province in a huge empire to the nation-state we call Iraq. First, you've got the Ottoman Empire, in charge for almost 400 years. But then World War I blows everything up. European powers, Britain and France, secretly draw new borders on a map. The League of Nations creates something called the British Mandate. And then, in 1921, the modern state of Iraq is born, complete with a king put on the throne by the British. And what came next? Well, basically a century of non-stop turmoil. It went from a monarchy run with British influence to a republic torn apart by military coups to the iron-fisted rule of Saddam Hussein, and finally to the very fragile democracy that's been trying to hold on since the 2003 US-led invasion. To really get a sense of the scale here, just look at this. The Abbasid Caliphate, with Baghdad at its center, lasted for over 5 centuries. The Sassanids and Ottomans each ruled for about 400 years. When you think about that immense timeline, the entire modern history of Iraq is just a blip on the radar. It's barely a blink of an eye. So let's pull it all the way back. Why does this one patch of land matter so much? Well, the answer is kind of everything. This is where civilization as we know it was born. The wheel, writing, agriculture. These are the fundamental building blocks of human society, and they all came from this very soil. And through all of this, for 4,000 years, 2 things have never changed. First, it has always been a melting pot of different peoples and faiths. And second, it has always been a battlefield. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. The story that kind of starts in the Bible with Babel's rise, well, it finds its end there too. The book of Revelation uses the fall of Babylon as this huge symbol for the end of all worldly power. And so that leaves us right here with one final and maybe the most important question of all. After 4 millennia of breathtaking creation and heartbreaking conflict, what does the next chapter hold for the land that gave birth to civilization itself?